The Goto revolution is over, at least for now. Zack Sabre Jr. is once again the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, and it happened at Tanahashi Jam. We're going to talk about that show. We'll preview this weekend's shows. Those are going to feature a heavy dose of House of Torture in G1 qualifiers and title matches. Oh boy, we may be in for a very long summer indeed. With Jeremy Finestone, I'm Steven Conway. This is Speaking of Strong Style. Welcome, everyone, to Speaking of Strong Style, where we discuss the news, issues, and events surrounding New Japan Pro Wrestling. And, Jeremy, we saw the news on Sunday when I picked up my phone there. Of course, this show was not broadcast on NJPW World. It was part of a TV Asahi television special. The news that Hirooki Goto lost to Zack Sabre Jr. and dropped the World Heavyweight title via referee stoppage. So a little bit of protection from Goto there that we'll get into in a bit. And they're selling that stoppage. He's not on the show tomorrow. They have quote unquote pulled him from the show, said his elbow is damaged from the world title match. But in all, when I saw this, that Zack had defeated Goto, I was a little bit surprised. And certainly a lot disappointed. I am a big fan of Zack Sabre Jr., and we're going to be talking about Zack a lot on this episode, of course. But to end the Goto revolution like that was a bit of a letdown. I know that there are a couple of reasons for it that they can give, or they would give if they pulled back the curtain and went behind the scenes. But boy, what did you think when you saw the news that Goto had lost to Zack?
Okay, so I knew I wasn't going to be able to watch it, so I just read the spoilers right away, and it was one of those, oh, shit. Okay, that's a thing. And so, I kind of processed it. I had to go to work pretty early that morning and do my thing, and I just the reaction upon the New Japan diehards that I know was it was deflating. It just felt like there was something really special and transcendent about what was going on with Goto, and it was just gone. It was in a flash, it's all over. And it was done in this sort of way where it's just okay, you had your fun. Now, we're getting back to it. And
getting back to what?
I don't know, but my mentality is this at this exact moment. Regarding the Goto reign, I had a great time with it. I had a great time with him winning it. I had a great time with some of those matches. And in that particular aspect, in that particular instance, my mentality is don't be sad it's over. Be happy that it happened at all. You know what I mean? That is where I'm looking at right now. And
it's very hallmark of you. Very hallmark.
You and I are going to run down this Tanahashi Jam card.
I'm going to run it down. All right.
And you're going to have your thoughts about it. And, I watched that Goto match, and it's a really good match.
Sure that's it is. The Look thing. Who was in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just a really good match with one of the most deflating endings you're going to see in a long time. And we're going to get into the where and why, and it being what it was not on World. It will be on World eventually, from what I understand. It's just, TV Asahi claimed dibs and paid a lot of money for it. And, based off of what I saw, the best analogy I could use is it felt like the New Japan World version of a Saturday Night Main Event.
Well, and that was what I was thinking also on that, because again, this is a television special in Japan, so a much bigger audience than they would have on World. And Colin mentions it's one of the dumbest decisions ever. The title match should have been on World. Colin, we're glad you're here. Brad, hello. Fernando Zayas, also Antonio N. Appreciate your comment. Thank you. This was on television, and that can't be discounted. NJPW World has fewer than 100,000 subscribers, depending on who you talk to. quite a bit fewer, perhaps, maybe even only half that. And the chance to be on TV, it would be difficult to resist the urge to do something big for a big audience of people who aren't normally watching New Japan, which is the point of having a TV special. So there were going to be different eyeballs than usual on this. I suppose they wanted to do a couple of things, make the splash, like give them like, oh gosh, wow, we saw something important happen since we watched this show. Maybe pull in some people who had drifted away in the pandemic, give them a great match. They certainly got a great match. Zack and Hirooki Goto were two of the best. If Forbidden Door also factored into this, if they sat there and said, we need to put this title on Zack because we have a show in England with AEW and we need to take the title off of a guy with such a sentimental, heartfelt following in Hirooki Goto and put it on Zack again just because we want to have, and he's going to carry it through the G1. Mm-hmm. There's no title match before the G1. So Zack's going to be the G1 champion, or the world champion in the G1 tournament. So they can go to August 24th to a show that has nothing announced for it yet with Zack as the world champion. I think that is a poorly thought out decision. I thought it's a dumb decision.
I think it worked out like a fortunate thing, but I don't think that was the reason.
You think the reason was simply that they were on TV and they wanted to do something big for the TV show?
I think that like they had a plan that they were going to put the title back on Zack before the G1. For whatever reason, the G1 layout, that's what they wanted to do. And you've seen it in the past with wrestling promotions. As much as something is working and the fans still want it, they're going to go in the direction that they're going to go in. Maybe Goto is legitimately injured. I don't think so. But there's just, I think it would be madness. And I think it's not the process of what's going on that New Japan is doing any of this with Forbidden Door in mind. You know,
I hope not, because that would be incredibly short-sighted. Right. I mean, these new Forbidden Door shouldn't be happening anymore in the first place. The door isn't forbidden. You see this stuff all the time. It's a clumsy show that gets in the way of AEW booking every year, which has enough problems. It gets in the way of New Japan booking every year, which has enough problems. I think the companies would be more intelligent to focus on their own core businesses and worry about what's going on in their home country, not worried about all this stuff. New Japan doesn't need to be worrying too much about getting people out in front of AEW audiences. They need to worry about Japan. And we're going to get into why I think they're going to need to worry about it more than ever very soon. But if that's part of it, it's very short-sighted. It's very silly.
Oh, it'd be completely short-sighted if that were the case.
Yeah, and I understand the idea of making a big splash, but do a big angle on the show, perhaps. Maybe not a world title change. There are a lot of ways you can make use of those extra eyeballs on a TV special. And I don't blame them for trying to do something, but there are, whether it's a challenge or a turn or something in there, I'm not up here offering up, well, this is the exact thing they should have done. But I can hear it like, well, we've got to give them something. We've got to give them something. And I think the world title match is just what they decided on. And I'm trying to figure out what exactly is the hook here. Putting the title back on Zack. I love Zack Sabre Jr. I'm a huge fan of the man. He did not set the world on fire at the box office when he was the world champion last year. No. And crowds were up until Dominion for Hirooki Goto's title reign. Now, you can say that maybe Goto is cooling off, or it could be the first big show after Naito's departure, the reason for that drop in attendance with Dominion. But my issue with it is just is it time to do this now? And is Zack the right person to take it? I'm unconvinced. And it's just it again concerns me as the direction, because why take the title off of Goto? Hopefully it's because they have something else in mind for Goto. Now, going back the other way, what do I worry about? I worry that they're freeing up Goto so that he can join this Avengers Endgame crap with now we need him for the good guys in Hantai against the bad guys in House of Torture, because the world title has mostly existed away from all this crap. And I worry that now Goto is about to get sucked into it. And that's a depressing thought. And, Zack could be the guy that goes and moves, around beyond it. But throwing Goto into that mix, I don't know what else he does if he's not challenging for the world title. And it makes him a contender for the G1. Sure. Yeah, it does. But, you just wonder what the direction is or what the thought process is.
The thing about Goto was it was a Cinderella story, right? Like it was the right moment at the right place at the right time. So putting him in a position to win it again, if at all, would be a more developed, cohesive story. You know what I mean? Like, I think if they were to have a plan, it would have to be a bit more long-term than, oh, hey, he lost it at the TV show and he's going to win it back at Wrestle Kingdom. That doesn't, I mean, you could do it, you know, like it's a nice story, but the problem with doing this, Steven, is when are we going to focus on the younger guys? Yeah. So, like, it's either are we going to do the Goto, like, coming back for it, and he's getting closer to the other end of the 40s into the 50s, while, we got a half a dozen guys coming on up that, frankly speaking, should have that belt around their waist over the next 5 years. Mm-hmm. So, to me, that's why it's like, be happy that it happened at all. Like, he's just one of the guys again. And he's always going to have that legitimacy. They now have a guy in Goto that can challenge for the world title whenever these new guys get it. And it's just one more guy of the world champion, like, caliber. So when these new guys get it, if Zack Sabre is still around, if Shingo is still around, if Hirooki Goto is still healthy, for every reign, you got at least 3 guys for a heel to challenge or whatever. And it's great that it happened. Now, to your other point about the future, it's weird right now. Like, it's all in disarray. We talked about how it was the white hats versus the black hats a little while last week and the week before, and it's getting a lot more regressive. We're like, we're stripping it as down as we can. House of Torture all up and down this show, in the lower half of the card. We were seeing the fingerprints all over it. And this G1 is going to be very important towards the goodwill that a lot of the longtime watchers of this promotion have, because they need to deliver with intensity and enthusiasm from the wrestlers themselves. Like, they are into what they're doing, and they're going to will the audience along with it, as well as compelling reasons for motivations for us to keep watching. And that is the part where I am with you that, if there are people that are tapping out and other podcasts that are really struggling to stay on pace with the product right now, I get it. Personally, for me, I'm in it for the long haul. Like, I knew what I signed up for when I'm like, I'm going to watch a wrestling promotion. I remember when WWE was awful in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, until it really got good again. And, it's kind of coming down and trending down. But, like, this is the pain of being a pro wrestling fan, is that you're living and dying with the creative decision and the health and the injuries and the sustainability of the promotion and the performers. Like I said, I get it. It's totally understandable with everything that's going on in New Japan. You've lost Okada. You've lost Naito. The old guard is getting pushed back. Like, Ishii and Taichi are no longer in the G1. If you were a fan of New Japan for the last 15 years, you're seeing a completely different product and decisions being made that are straying from what made you love the product in the first place. And to be at that fork road, to be at that crossroad, right? To decide, like, do I want to stay with this product, or do I want to give my attention to something else. That is legitimately the kind of like position that we are at for some people right now. This is one of those moments in a promotion where they're like, am I really ready to commit to this for the next couple of years if this is what they're going to be doing? So I'm praying, man, that they offer us something in which our own relationship in doing this podcast remains undisturbed as it is, because I enjoy doing the show with you, but I'm probably not going to stop watching New Japan regardless of what's going on.
We'll have to see, because one of the things I'm worried about the G1 for a lot of reasons. And one is the sameness of the field compared to last year's, except for the small differences, I think all of which could hurt them. So we have a very, very similar field, painfully similar field, a dulling sameness to this field, except no guests whatsoever, not even a Kiyomiya. And I like Kiyomiya. It was nice to have a little bit of a fresh face in there, but no guests this year at all. No Naito. So one of the differences is one of the big draws. Was Naito as good in the ring? No, but it is undeniable he was a draw for this company. He put people in the seats. I'm saying that the other difference is same field, no Naito, and a heavy. We're giving you last year's tournament, but not your favorites, and with a healthy dose of House of Torture all the way through. That does not bode well. And I'm predicting right here, well, I'm going to hold myself to it because I'm going to be doing the show at least through the G1. I will look at the attendance, because I always do. And my prediction is that year over year, this tournament is going to be down from last year. There will be fewer people in the seats than last year, because I just don't think the enthusiasm is there. We're going to get to some of these comments in just a moment. And hello, Maria, we're there. Glad
you want to hear something interesting about Naito while you're getting to these comments?
Yes.
So I was asking around. I went to a few people that I don't usually ask for, any insight on any of this stuff. And one of the things they said about Naito is that he was approached during this whole time that he was divorcing himself from the company to do a match with Goto, and he did not want to do that in the contract negotiations period of the thing. Make that what you will, but Naito was not on board with giving Goto the rub.
Well, I don't know where that would come from his end, but I'm sure he had some sort of reason within himself for that. But War Hero had a question here. We're going to get to these comments. But he said, Goto winning the G1. Why can't the champion win G1? Is War Hero's thing. Well, they can't. And in the past they have, but it's been a very, very long time. I think, what was it? Keiji Muto won as champion. The G1 is a bit of a plot device for creating challengers. So it takes a very special story for the champion to win the tournament, because the whole point is the winner of the G1 is a wrestler who has fought his contemporaries, battled through the other contenders, come out as king of the mountain, and therefore has all kinds of momentum toward whatever title they want to challenge for. And as a plot device, it's hard to beat that for building up a big match and to build up a big show, a main event for a big show. Can they have a champion win? Yeah, of course they can. And the story you would tell there is that you have someone who is utterly dominant. And sometimes you want to tell that story. Sometimes you want to build somebody into that. So with Keiji Muto, they had him win the G1 as champion, and then they had a special match in mind for him to name. So he named he called his own shot. So if you had something extraordinarily special, you absolutely could have the champion win if you have a surprise or a guest or some sort of big time draw set up for him to, when he calls his own shot, it's not just, well, I'm going to name somebody I just beat a little while ago in this tournament. It's, I've got something special here. I want that guy. And when he names that guy, there's a gasp in the crowd. That would be a good way to do it if you ever wanted to have the champion. The reason that they don't very often is just because it's such a good plot device for setting up a challenger and to have a credible challenger come out of this tournament. Anyone who wins the G1, you think in the next few months could absolutely be the world heavyweight champion. There's just, that it just sets it all up for that, because you've seen them win big matches against other big names so much during the tournament. It just works out that way. But there is no rule certainly against it. And but it looks like Zack is going to be going in as a champion. I don't expect Zack to win the G1 this year. I'm still going with the idea that Takeshita, Yota Tsuji, those guys are the direction. And I still think that with any degree of sanity in the front office, setting up a Takeshita or a Tsuji for 2026 as a main event world title guy to draw houses is the smart move, needs to be the smart move. And if they move away from that because they get cold feet about putting a newer, younger talent in that spot, then we could be headed for a pretty serious slump with this company. Just saying, that's worrying if they aren't, because I feel like those guys are ready. And if anything, New Japan needs new blood, or you end up with like what we've seen with Noah over the last few years, where they have a lot of very good wrestlers, but we have seen every combination of these guys against each other, and there's just not a whole lot new that Noah can show us other than matches we have already seen. Good matches, good wrestlers, talented guys. Noah's got a little bit of momentum right now with Ozawa, so things are cyclical. But for years, Noah was a little stuck in the mud, and it was a little dull just because we had seen every combination. Threatening to go that direction if it goes wrong here this year.
What is your feeling on Zack's title reign? Do you think it's more likely that he loses it before Wrestle Kingdom or at Wrestle Kingdom or after?
With the way last Wrestle Kingdom went and its perception, I would be surprised if they went with him in the main event again.
Yeah, I kind of think that he's set to lose the title before that at some point.
I think so too. And
part of it's why I didn't think they wanted Goto in that position. Like whoever he's going to lose it to, like he needed the credibility of beating the world champion, so that the next guy that beats him like gives that guy the rub rather than like the direct line. And that's the whole thing that I've gotten out of this is, why do you do this? And he's clearly going to go to the post block play, and he's probably going to run the table in his block, maybe like lose once and then lose in the second round against the guy who advanced and he loses in the bye. And that's like the only guy he loses against. And then that guy gets the title from him. Like I would not be shocked about this at all. But the whole thing is just set to make him look dominant and then lose on a fluke. Just feels like what they were trying to do here. That match that he did with Goto it just felt like a different Zack Sabre Jr. in a lot of ways. We'll get to recapping that in a minute. But everything about this says that like there is no clear vision that we could tell from Wrestle Kingdom other than Tanahashi probably closing the show. Right?
Yeah,
like there's like
if he doesn't close the show, he's the main point of it.
He's the main point of it, but like that's what people are there for. You saw the drop in attendance when Naito left. That Tanahashi's a big deal. They've been building it for a year and a half. Like it's just there's no way to me that like I'm going because it's the Tanahashi like goodbye.
What you just said illustrates again why they need to go with younger people, because with Naito leaving and Business at Dominion slumping, which might not be the only reason, but it's almost certainly a reason.
It's a component for sure.
And we saw the steady 10 to 20% increase in attendance level off since he left. It just seems like that it has had an impact. Tanahashi leaving could have a little bit of an impact the same way. It's why they need to get behind a new young wrestler and push that person, whether it's Takeshita, whether it's Tsuji, whether it's Uemura, whether it's Shota, whoever. I'm just saying, whatever. They need to go all in on somebody, because the others have kind of, if you just say, well, those guys aren't ready, we're scared, nobody's ready yet, even though a couple of them are. let's just go with Goto, Zack, and the guys we've been going with. Except it's not. Those people have already proven that they can't get attendance back up to
safe and conservative are not the same thing.
We have seen the ceiling of that. We've seen the ceiling of those guys. The only way you are going to push past that is to get somebody new in there that galvanizes the fan base. Nothing in sports, and this is a weird combination of theater and sports, is more exciting really than a young sensation.
Right.
A rookie.
Paul Skeens last year, right?
Paul Skeens. And we're seeing, whenever you see the new rookie in the NBA, everyone's all excited about that. And when you see, NFL.
Watching the new NFL QB, right? What if it's Shedeur Sanders? We're
who knows?
Can't wait to see whether he succeeds or fails, but you give him the shot,
Yes, and just the new guy getting the push is a big deal, and I think that's where that has to happen. And War Hero's asking, where does Goto stand? We don't know. They don't announce those things publicly. We will not be getting anything from New Japan. We talked about that last week. They don't acknowledge officially in any kayfabe sense that there even is a creative committee. It's just not something that they do. So it'll never be announced out loud to us. Some of the other comments we have right here, because we have some good ones. Brad is mentioning this. He said, honestly, the way AEW and CMLL have been doing their build this year is better than the AEW and NJPW builds. 250%. Yeah. How is it still this hard for all those involved? I think that's a great question.
You were honestly on a roll earlier, but I wanted to add something to it.
Go ahead.
This Forbidden Door feels like it could be a lot more CMLL and Stardom than it is going to be New Japan this year. Maybe a half dozen guys, but who are they going to bring over? Tanahashi and Shibata are probably going to get their match. After that, are we going to put Yota Tsuji and Hiromu in a multi-man tag again? Then you got to make room for Mystico for a big match. Maybe Sari is in a match. Maybe, Mercedes Moné, who's also New Japan. There's only 11 or 12 matches on this card. We're only going to get 3 or 4 big spot, Gabe Kidd, Tanahashi. These are the guys that they're focusing on in AEW. I think we're getting a lot more CML. I think we're getting a whole lot more Stardom. I think the interaction between New Japan is going to be.
I don't know about Stardom. Yeah, I don't know about Stardom because this is also coming in right during their 5-star Grand Prix. So it's a little trickier.
But that's why you have Sari, and she's representing IWGP. You can have her, and Mercedes already has the strong title. So you could bring one over, or you could just bring somebody over from Rev Pro or CMLL. That's what I'm saying. It just feels like it's going to be a lot more towards that kind of talent pool than it is going to be we're pulling heavy from the well that is New Japan this year.
Brad also mentions it's interesting that both New Japan and Stardom lost their biggest draws in Naito and Tamu Nakano, respectively. And Stardom hasn't missed a beat as far as attendance goes. Yeah, very true. And again, Saya Kamitani isn't a rookie by any stretch. She's been around for years, but pushing her at this level is new. And you can almost make a little bit of a parallel between Kamitani as someone who was spent a couple of years hovering near the top. She held the white belt. That was a big one. Yota Tsuji held the global belt. And, as far as as a Tsuji type, somebody who came in, was good, was pushed, but not that high, don't get crazy with Saya Kamitani. And then, so she was there and she held titles. She held championships just like Yota has and all this stuff, but spent a couple of years at that upper mid card level with some doses of main events sprinkled in there. And then when they found the right story for her, they pulled the trigger. And now Saya Kamitani went from being a star in Stardom to the star in Stardom, and is almost certainly, going to be, I think, the Tokyo Sports probably a female Joshi MVP anyway. I think. Well, I mean, Sari's going to give her a run, but Saya's there, and so it's an interesting thing where I think that's an interesting parallel. And when they finally decided to go all guns blazing with Saya Kamitani, it worked. And they have depth, and they have young people coming up that they're excited about. So, some lessons to be learned there from that one. And trying to think of else. Brad mentions, do you think they do Goto versus Shibata? And they wanted the title off Goto to not allow Shibata to be in a title match, as they might still be upset with him. I kind of agree with Jeremy that I think Tanahashi might be the more likely thing with opponent for Shibata.
I think it was also Shibata just mouthing off, but it always just felt like Tanahashi.
Yeah, I think so. And also the other part of that is Shibata and Goto, that's a New Japan story. That would mean nothing to AEW. Goto's never been a steady presence in AEW. We know that most AEW fans don't really pay attention to New Japan. And doing that on I know the Shibata is on the outs because of what happened at the Tokyo Dome and all that stuff. So it's very tricky with Shibata. But Goto and Shibata, I don't think would mean much in an AEW ring. It just doesn't mean anything to those fans. It would be an interesting match to see again because of the history between the two. It would be a match that would actually mean something back in Japan. Doing it in North America, I think, would just land with a thud. You can do it, but I just wouldn't be interested.
UK. It's in the UK.
Well, okay, pardon me. Yeah, the UK, but same answer.
No, I hear
that needs to be in Japan. That needs to be.
It's not a Western familiar feud.
Yeah, no.
And I'm not dismissing anything out of hand, but there was a reason Shibata got in the ring with Tanahashi on January 5th and stood in the middle of the ring with him. And when they announced almost immediately after that his last U.S. date was going to be in Chicago and it was against Takeshita, and it's pretty clear that the doctors in New Japan will never let Shibata wrestle in a ring in Japan. I mean, you're kind of, if you want this match to happen, guys, I think it's Tanahashi and Shibata at Forbidden Door. Like, it ain't happening anywhere else.
Yeah, and so let's see. Colin is saying, no, Sari, please God, no. It doesn't want Sari in there. Be curious to hear why.
Safe. She's not going to get poached by WWE after, and that's part of the reason.
Well, yeah, she certainly is not, isn't she? She's certainly not.
Like, I was like, because she won't get poached by WWE, he can put her on as Joshi talent at Forbidden Door and call it a day. That, to me, felt like a Tony Khan kind of, like, play more than Zack Sabre Jr. over Goto.
Colin's saying, what do I make of Shuri taking a hiatus from Stardom? And she's banged up a little bit, she said, but she also just wants to take some time. Yeah, Shuri taking a break from Stardom is very interesting to me. The way this whole thing went with Shuri winning the title from Mayu and then immediately dropping it to Sari. Well, there's one match against Alex Windsor in there, which is on NJPW World, by the way, if you want to see it. To me, this is something that I've been saying for a while. Is like it's like Shuri is on the wrong end of the romantic comedy scale with Stardom, in that Shuri, they're just not that into you. And she's a fantastic talent, but they're just not that into her. I think the best thing for Shuri might be, depending if the money is there, is Marty Gold. I think that it's time to go. You know, they just don't want to get behind her. Since she dropped the title to Julia, the red belt to Julia, when Julia won the 5-star Grand Prix, went to Dream Queendom, a fantastic match, wonderful build-up. Shuri was one of the best red belt champions they've had. And then she's done almost nothing since, and it's been years. Eventually you just got to read the writing on the wall that it's not there for you. And perhaps it's time to make the move. Now, if the money's not there, and I know that Shuri is also in charge of a lot of the training in Stardom, which she takes very seriously, but you ask what she ought to do, maybe time to see if the pastures are greener.
Maybe. I don't have much to add, because from what I hear, she seems to be really great, and they just don't appreciate her that much. It reminds me of that meme of the guy walking with the girl, and she's aghast as he's looking back towards the other girl walking in the other direction in red. And he's like, ooh, and she's like, ah, and then the other person just blissfully. Like,
Colin finds yeah, okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, Colin finds Sari overrated, he says. So there you go. But Brad mentions that Hazuki, Koguma, and Shuri are all on excursion in the U.S. That's an interesting trio. Also, when you look at where they might end up in a year or two, if Stardom is into any of those three in the way that they used to be. Let's see what else we've got going here. War Heroes asking, could Shibata bring up attendance or Suzuki? I'm not sure what show you're referring to. Shibata's not coming back to New Japan. They seem pretty insistent on that. Suzuki, I feel like everybody that Suzuki's been in AEW a bunch of times. They some of the people in the crowd sing his song, but I don't think he means a lot for tickets. Again, a lot of the AEW fans aren't New Japan fans. These guys don't mean a whole lot to them. So, no,
I'll be
not
in the Discord talking AEW and New Japan, and most of the New Japan references go right over people's heads.
Yeah, it's just not that. It's just not
it's
a thing.
Fine. Like you either follow it or you don't. Like I don't understand magic references when I'm playing D&D, but it is what it is. Like they're close, but they're not the same.
Yeah. And Matthew Rodriguez, I see your question. We're going to get to it when we start talking a little bit more about Bolton Oleg. He has a question about Bolton, and we are going to get to that
Bolton
one.
or Bolton Oleg?
Yeah, whichever one. I go back and forth too. And Maria Graciela Sias is here. We're glad you're here, Maria. And she says she likes House of Torture. So they do have a fan in North America.
You have two. I like House of Torture too. I do.
Tanahashi Jam. Should we get into that then? We've kind of gone philosophical here.
I do want to, but I want to do a bump real quick.
Oh, please. Yes.
Yeah. This weekend. Before we get into Tanahashi Jam, Steven Conway and I at 5 p.m. Eastern on Sunday are going to hang out with Garrett Gonzalez on the show The Watchback. And on that show, we are going to discuss the classic Kenny Omega versus Kazuchika Okada Wrestle Kingdom 11 match that they had. And we'll probably sit around for 2 hours talking about it. Everyone's welcome to join. We're going to be talking about how great they look before their upcoming match that could be a classic. Could just be a run back of things in the past that they're going to have at All In on July 12th, in which I'll be doing a pay-per-view recap of that with JD Oliva. More details to follow.
Yeah, that's coming up. I believe we're doing all of Wrestle Kingdom 11, like the whole show, right? Aren't we going?
I thought we're just doing. He's watching the whole thing for his references and information, but we're just watching the single match.
Oh, I'm watching the whole thing. I'm going to sit down and watch the whole thing. Yeah,
good for you.
It'll probably be refreshing.
It's probably better for the whole vibe of feeling the main event. I did watch the main event. I'll probably watch the whole show in like conjunction with watching just the main event.
Brad saying I watched the 4 Okada Omega matches to my dad last weekend. It was my second time in 2 weeks watching them again. And I never get tired of those masterpieces. The Omega and Okada, of course, truly one of the great rivalries of this generation and in ring, just about any. And I do look forward to revisiting that first one. It was so exciting and interesting, Jeremy. I've been doing research setting up for it. Such a fascinating journey for Kenny Omega to even get to that match in a year. Right. The things that happened between the Wrestle Kingdom 10 and Wrestle Kingdom 11 for Kenny Omega, pretty staggering 12 months for a human being in the wrestling business. So I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Look, I don't mean to be lazy here, but between you and Garrett and the research you guys are doing, I'm just going to sit down and hang out. Like, I'll watch the match, I'll watch the show, but I'm just like, you guys are going to be coming in so hot and heavy that I'm just going to be like, yep,
Well, I get to turn the tables now because we're not mentioning any names. We're not mentioning any possible encryption services or anything there, but okay. Jeremy Finestone here has seen the Tanahashi Jam, which is unavailable to fans in the North American area here. But Jeremy has actually, by a little bit of hook and a little bit of crook, actually seen this show. So we're going to talk about.
People like me enough to help me out with these kind of things without even me asking. They're like, "Hey, do you need this thing?" And I'm like, "Hey, thanks. I really appreciate it." And then I try and remember that and be thoughtful towards them in the future. It's a weird transactional thing that friends do. It's
yeah. What do these people think? You do the show by yourself? Why didn't I get an email? What the hell is that?
It's wild. I mean, I sent it along to you and just couldn't figure out how to make it.
Yeah, and it didn't work. Thing didn't work.
So I got some details here, Steven, that you typically like. This took place at the Dolphin Arena in Nagoya, Japan. The attendance was 4,570.
4,570. That's strong.
Yeah, and it aired live on TV Asahi. This was the Tanahashi Jam. It opened with a Daiki Odashima versus Katsuya Murashima to a time limit draw. It was basically a Young Lions match to get the crowd fired off. I didn't write a whole lot of notes because we've seen a Young Lions match with Murashima many, many, many times. And I wasn't quite sure what I was getting myself into on this show. 10 minutes, fast, quick moving, but, nothing so innately special that you need to make time for that.
Yeah.
Jeopardy.
Odashima is a Noah Young Lion.
Yes. So the first match was a 6-man tag team match. It was Hiroshi Tanahashi, Ryusuke Taguchi, and Shota Umino, and they defeated Hiromu Takahashi, Leona, and Tatsumi Fujinami.
So there you have it with Leona is Fujinami's son.
There you go. Shota and Tanahashi, the high spot, were doing the dual submissions. Another high spot was Loana, Hiromu, and Fujinami, all locking in. All locking in submissions on Tana, but Tana ended up getting the win on that one. So next was House of Torture versus Hontai, and that was Chase Owens, Evil, Ren Narita, and Yujiro Takahashi, your favorite combination of people.
Good Lord.
They defeated Taichi, Tomohiro Ishii, Yoshihashi, and Yuya Uemura when Chase Owens gave the package pile driver on Yoshihashi. This was exactly what you thought it would be. The quick match, all the House of Torture stuff, 8 minutes and 43 seconds. It didn't get too long in the tooth because it was on national television. So the low spots were predictably short. I don't want to call them high spots, just out of deference to you. After that, we had a singles match. Yuji Nagata versus Oleg Boltin. This went 9 minutes, 14 seconds. I don't want to say anything good or bad about it. It was fine. It felt like Yuji Nagata really, really wanted to give the rub to Boltin Oleg and to like put him over, and he really liked the guy. But it became more about Yuji doing the job than it was Boltin getting over, if that makes sense. Where it was like Yuji kind of became the star of like, I put this guy over. Look at me putting this guy over, hugging him in the ring after. It was good. He took the kamikaze, totally fine match. Like I said, this was a popcorn show. It wasn't science. It wasn't like a technical masterpiece until you got later on in the thing. It was just, that was the kind of show it was.
And the key to this was a never open weight title match. So that is the first defense of that title for Oleg. And the other end of that is Nagata is heavily involved with Bushiroad's amateur wrestling program, or at least Olympic wrestling program. I should call it Olympic wrestling more than amateur wrestling. They're sponsored and all that. But so they are professional athletes. But he works with that group as well as training wrestlers for New Japan Pro Wrestling. And so Nagata has been a huge part of Boltin's wrestling career, both as his time in Japan with the Bushiroad sponsored Olympic wrestling team, a team to train wrestlers for the Olympics is what I mean by that. And then also, of course, with him as a pro wrestler. So a lot of interaction with those two and mentorship. Yeah, so that was an important title defense for Boltin in that sense. It felt
sentimental. It definitely did. Like a passing of the torch, like proud of you, kid, that kind of thing. And that part of it was.
And I want to get to this one from Matthew here. He says, do you think Oleg Boltin has come a long way from 2023 to today? Absolutely he has. He's come leaps and bounds. And do you think that Oleg will win the Global Heavyweight Championship or the World Heavyweight Championship next in the future? It's an interesting question. I would say that they will probably work him up the ladder. I could see him being a global champion someday.
Global seems great.
Yeah, it does. They could take him all the way to the world title sometime. He's not ready for that yet, but that not to say that he won't be.
That's a big ask, like
he's getting better with the pro wrestling. Certainly he's becoming a pretty good worker. The most important thing for Boltin that he's really picked up in the last year is his emoting, his facial expressions, his fire. All of that has come a long, long way in 12 months. It was what was kind of missing at first. He was a little robotic in there. He had to kind of get comfortable. And there comes a point, Jeremy, when you get enough reps, you stop counting steps. You stop thinking about where your feet are. You stop thinking about where the next, you're doing it, but you're doing it subconsciously. And that's when you can start performing, getting the facials in there, the reactions, and Boltin's starting to pick that up. And he's really developing into a terrific talent in pro wrestling too.
I think this is a little outside the box, but I think Boltin's biggest challenge to winning the IWGP Heavyweight Title will be whatever success Aaron Wolf has.
Okay. Let's take a look at this question. We have a question from Brad that I'm curious to hear, Jeremy, because when they do shows like this for TV, are there breaks for commercials, or are the shows just straight through without breaks? What did you encounter when you watched this?
Straight on through. They had advertisements at the beginning, bunch of advertisements, and there were, promotional throughout the show, I think. I don't think commercials, but like the advertisements on the ring and stuff like that. But there was about 3 or 4 minutes of advertisement before the show, and then it launched right in.
Yeah, there are differences. When I was in Japan, I watched some. I don't watch a lot of TV in the hotels, but I did have it on for some of it, and it seemed like it depended on the channel there. Some shows more like the BBC in England, where you get the commercials between the programs and not during. And others a little bit more like America, where you would get a little natural break in there and there would be a little dramatic pause and they would cut to a couple minutes of ads like you see here. So there was a little bit of each on Japanese TV. So I was curious as to which one this was. But you say it felt more like you were watching a live card rather than building.
It felt like a premium sporting event kind of thing, where they're just like, we're running this through. And there was virtually no difference from watching it on the New Japan World, except there were no match breaks in between like match chapters.
So after that, it went to an 8-man tag match, Jeremy, that was more on the junior heavyweight side of the ledger.
Was there? I thought it was
Dragon Kid, El Desperado, Master Wato.
I had it as a 6-man tag. That's why. Actually, first, that's when Aaron Wolf came out. Aaron Wolf came out and addressed the audience live, and there was no translation to it, but it was basically like, "Hi, I'm Aaron Wolf. I'm going to bring honor to New Japan." Everybody clapped. We were all happy. Let's see with them. Dragon Kid, El Desperado, Master Wato, and Yo defeated Doki, Kanata, Sho, and Yoshinobu Kanemaru. Somehow I only had Despy, Wato, and Dragon Dia versus Kanata, Sho, and Yutro. So
Dragon Dia, he wasn't even in there. It was Dragon Kid.
I wrote this way wrong. I was real tired at that point.
That's all right. Yeah.
It was another House of Torture match. As we were getting up the card, it was just showing that House of Torture is a major faction in New Japan rather than it being anything, like they were given prominence on the card, just like you don't want them being given 2 or 3 matches on the card to people who are checking in on a major broadcast. Like you were shown who the players were in New Japan based off of what you saw on this card. And so you got that Dragon Kid. I had Dragon Kid, not Dragon Dia. That kind of screwed that one up. All right, next one up, we got the New Japan World Television title. It was El Phantasmo versus an X, which turned out to be his old Bullet Club bro, Taiji Ishimori.
I got to eat crow on this one. I predicted that Tanahashi would get cheeky and try to work 3 times on his own show and be the surprise one and do the handshake with him afterwards or something. As it turns out, it was Ishimori instead, which would have made for a much better match, I'm convinced.
It was a nice idea to call back to this Bullet Club stuff that they did in the thing.
No.
As you could probably guess, there was a lot of ELP's knee being sold throughout this 11-minute match where Ishimori is just going after it until ELP pulled out the win. And when it has a 15-minute limit, and we've watched these throughout the last couple of years, if it's babyface, you just kind of know what they're gonna do in order to, like, can he survive the onslaught from the challenger? And that was what this was.
And of course, this was ELP coming back after missing a few shows. As a precautionary measure, he was day-to-day with a banged-up knee. And instead of it being a severe injury, they just thought, well, maybe we don't need him in 6 and 8 person tags. We'll pull him out so that he can do the TV special. Probably the good move. Not probably. It was a smart move. The correct thing.
In the typical ELP fashion, he went on social media a few hours before the show, telling, "What up, bitches? I got cleared for the show. I'll see you at Tanahashi Jam." And it's like you got exactly the match for a guy that got cleared from knee injury. You sell the knee. It's wrestling 101. Let's move on.
And Ray Rays is here. Ray Rays, we're glad you're here. We're about to talk about the match that your comment is about. We will get to your comment when we get to it. We're getting pretty close. 6-person tag up next, and that was
Great Khan, Jacob Austin Young, and Callum Newman versus Yota Tsuji, Shingo Takagi, and Shun Skywalker.
Yeah, that's an interesting little twist on the thing here with Hiromu out of town.
So Shun Skywalker comes out. The best way that I can describe it is that he's wearing the black Spider-Man suit from Spider-Man 3, where it's just like this black with metallic sheen all over the whole thing. And then he's got like this full face mask on with a third eye and like the totemish style smile that he walks down the ring in these full dreads. And then he takes off the mask to reveal another mask in which he has the full everything but his mouthpiece open. So he can breathe finally. And then he proceeds to wrestle completely. Like, I've seen him like masked and closed up, but not like full body, like top to bottom. And it felt like, oh, hey, we got the spectacle here. And
he was dressed like a women's wrestler appearing in Saudi Arabia.
This is not inaccurate. Another 11-minute match. Yota and Shingo basically got their stuff in early, and then the back half of the match was all about let's give Shun Skywalker 3 or 4 minutes to just look good, get the win, and that was that. And you sure knew who Shun Skywalker was when this match was over.
Were you impressed by him? Did you like what you saw?
Yeah, I always typically like Shun Skywalker when I see him, but he felt like he fit in right with Yoda and Shingo. So if they're doing something together going forward, he feels like a good addition to their group if they're going to do that. And I couldn't tell for sure if Skywalker had joined New Japan or it was just a thing for the show.
Yeah, no word on that yet. There were guests on this. There's certainly people from other companies. Like so, we had a Noah wrestler earlier. There's a Noah wrestler in the main event. There are people from other places on this show. So it doesn't necessarily mean anybody's coming in full time. They are Tanahashi's guests for the night.
Yeah. So that was pretty much it on that one. And then, well, you want to get to the semi-main?
Semi-main event, not on top. This is the Tanahashi Jam. So he had a tag team match later on after this one. But the IWGP World Heavyweight Title, Zack Sabre Jr., Hirooki Goto, it went 28-14, referee's decision. We mentioned all that earlier. You also mentioned that this was a hell of a good match, Jeremy. Talk us through what you saw and the story they told.
All right, so I would say this is second to the match in which Goto won, I think, basically off of the crowd reaction in general.
Challenging to beat the emotion of that night, isn't it? Real
absolutely. And I mean, you have the emotional high of that win, and you have the emotional low of him like losing that title, and they were very much the same side, the different sides to the same coin. From less than 5 minutes in, the story was that Sabre Jr. targeting Goto's right arm. And I didn't notice it the first time. But the second time, it becomes completely obvious what the story of this match is. And they're doing their normal things, but there are subtle hints throughout it. He'll just kick at the arm, or Goto will shake it off at some point. About 10 minutes into the match, they're about ringside working on the apron, and Zack Sabre Jr. starts targeting his arm pretty viciously again. And then you can start seeing that Goto's like, okay, this is starting to affect me. And they're trading shots in the ring, and Goto's trying to ignore the pain. He's still using his arm like, I am going to fight through this. Like, this is not going to stop me. And then about 18 minutes in, Zack Sabre Jr. gets him into one of his like octopus submissions. And he starts wrenching on his right arm in a way where Goto's just pulling back and back and back. And Zack pulls on it so far that Goto's body turns backwards and his foot hits the ring rope. And Zack is apoplectic and frustrated because he knows that he almost had him. From there, it's almost academic, okay? There are moments where Goto's starting to make a comeback. and he hits a GTR and he hits a couple of his signature moves, the Ushigoroshi, I believe, in that little 5-minute period after it happens, but before the climax of the match. But the damage that Zack has done to Goto's arm through the entirety of the 20 minutes beforehand makes it so that Goto becomes more and more vulnerable to attacks by Sabre Jr. until he gets locked into that same submission that he was in earlier. And he won't give up, but he's trapped. And he's near the corner of the ring. Zack has fixed his mistake from earlier, and he just wrenches on the arm and pulls back, and Goto won't tap out, and he won't quit. And Red Shoes is just like, I have to call it. And you sit there and you're watching it and you're just like, God damn, what a great match. And then you see that crowd and they're dead. Like there's a couple of polite claps, like good match, like congratulations to the champion, but it dead. Like this crowd got their heart ripped out because they thought, like, Goto's going to beat this guy. Like he's already beaten him, like the whole deal. And that to me was what just added to everything. Was sometimes your guy doesn't win and it sucks. And there's like the creative decision that sometimes that being a little more in the know about everything makes it like you want to analyze the business aspect of why they did one of these things. But if you're just watching this show and you're watching this match and Goto's your guy and he loses, this is a match where the promotion broke your heart. But now it's their job to put it back together.
Yeah, I'm still struggling to find the business reason for this as well. I really am. As far as if your job is to sell tickets, and it is, again, we say it over and over on the show, but it just bears repeating. They don't have $1 billion television contract. They have a TV show. Doesn't make them nearly as much money as the North American promotions. New Japan, merchandise and ticket sales. That's how New Japan makes its money. And how taking down Goto for Zack helps that, I don't know. It's a little bit of a mystery to me on that. And then Ray's mentions here, finally, Zack has recaptured the IWGP. Sound like Ray's in favor of it, though. He says, now we can focus on him trying to elevate the younger talent and prepare them for future
If that's the plan, let's do it.
That's what we are hoping. That is what we are hoping. But again, I think there's going to be some short-term pain on that, if not long-term. War Hero 99
had pretty evil plans.
yeah. War Hero 99 made I had a question for you. What do you think of the two women's champions? Well, I think they're both very talented. I mean, Saria's, I know Colin says she's overrated. I'm a little bit perplexed at the way other promotions bring her in and have her beat their best people all the time. That's perplexing to me. She doesn't do a lot of jobs, and she seems to beat a lot of top drawing talent for multiple companies. That's a mystery to me sometimes there. But on the other side, strong champion being Osmi's phenomenal. So I'm in favor of both of them. Again, we also said that New Japan has done a poor job of working these titles into any kind of New Japan storylines or even shows. Half the time they don't even appear on the shows. Strong titles are those strong shows that are barely even canon. So that why they're here is a little strange too, but nevertheless, I won't complain about the two women that are holding the belts.
I would say it's very difficult for me to find two other women who have the work rate talent and the international notoriety that matches these two at this exact moment.
There you go. That's fair to say. And that isn't already on top. That's the other thing is like,
sure, like that somebody's already claimed and says, no, they're doing dates for us.
SLK and Saya
does, but she's not technically right now the top woman in AEW.
No, yeah, that's interesting. Although she has almost every other belt, it seems like in the world.
She on 6 or 7 right now.
I stopped counting.
After 6, I was like, is she going to get another one? Probably. She's probably not going to lose any before then.
It reminds me when they did the Super J Cup. This is different than the Super Juniors, where they had 8 different junior heavyweight champions. New Japan put this thing together in the 90s. 8 different junior heavyweight champions. And they kind of brought a couple of old titles out of the mothballs that hadn't really been active and things. They put together a one-night tournament, and it was the J Crown. And Great Sasuke had it. Black Tiger, Eddie Guerrero had it for a while and things. But then when all these companies sort of wanted their belts back, you saw this little parade of champions going around and dropping individual titles off. And it was like Johnny Appleseed, just like or an Oprah thing, like, you get a junior heavyweight title, and you get a junior heavyweight title, and you get one.
Can I get my deposit on this title back, please?
All of a sudden, there were 8 of them again floating around. So yeah. And Brad says the IWGP and Strong titles have incredible histories for titles that have never had stories behind them. Yeah. They've had great wrestlers held them. Great wrestlers have held these belts. Almost none of it's meant anything long term, but a lot of great wrestlers have held these belts. Okay, Tanahashi Jam had a main event though. The world title match was not the end of it. There was one more to go, and it involved 2 presidents. So what do you got?
Hiroshi Tanahashi and Naomichi Marufuji defeated Kaito Kiyomiya and Ryohei Oiwa in 19 minutes and 10 seconds. If you'll remember, Kiyomiya and Oiwa were a dynamic duo in Noah a couple years ago before Oiwa came back, and Marufuji and Tanahashi have a friendly, collegial relationship with each other as leaders of promotions at this point. And they came out there, and Steven, they had a fun little match. Tanahashi had a great night. I thought he preserved himself incredibly well in that opening match. And after I realized that he was in 2 matches tonight. And, Kiyomiya and Oiwa were able to do a lot with him. The crowd was up for it. Like, they knew how to get the crowd back because they're pros, even though they were pretty deflated after the fact. And, it was the last match. It was going to be in the Dolphin Arena, this legendary arena that has been in New Japan. They announced it a year ago that they were going to be doing one more show here before it closed down. And this is Tanahashi's last performance here in the Dolphin Arena. Yeah, there's going to be some feels to it. I get why it closed the show. And, you're watching it, some things didn't hit perfectly, but in 2025, you're curving on a grading scale. The grading scale's on a curve with Tanahashi a little bit. And even then, he wasn't forced to do a whole lot because he was in a tag, and Marufuji is limited as well, but you wouldn't know it by watching it in the ring. Like, he moves very well, and he moves like he knows where the next spot is going to be. And these were all veterans, and it was a fun match. And the end of the match was Tanahashi doing the ace high and then the high fly flow on Ryohei Oiwa. And then at the same time, Marufuji gave, I think it's the slice spread number 2, where you get the guy in the headlock and then you run up the side of the ring and then do the backward. So he gave him the slice spread number 2 and then did the dual pin and sent the crowd home happy. Did the whole speech at the very end, walked around the rest of the ring side of the crowd, and fun little show, Steven. Fun little show.
That walk around that Tanahashi's doing, he's always interacted with fans on the way out. You remember doing the little air hugs during the pandemic, and before and after, wiping the sweat off with the towel and tossing it back to him, which my girlfriend always says never fails to get her to go, ew. But that's always his
DNA otherwise. How do you create another Tanahashi without something like that?
Not my problem, thankfully. But I understand what you mean. These walkarounds now are starting to take on a life of their own, in that it's hitting home for the fans as he goes around to these towns one more time. I'm not going to be able to do this again. And you're starting to see people from the entire floor section, sometimes from the bleachers, crowd the ringside area, not in a dangerous way. They just want to get close. They want to take a picture. They want to touch him. And instead of just the first or second row kind of reaching out, now you see just hundreds and hundreds of people kind of crowding around ringside trying to get one last little interaction in with Hiroshi Tanahashi. And that's only going to pick up as we get closer to his very last night in the Dome, which will be, can you imagine his last show at Korakuen? His last one at Edion in Osaka, his last one at, that's pretty fierce. It's going to be pretty fierce.
How can you miss that, Steven? How can you miss talking about that in a couple months?
All right, so we have two shows coming up this weekend. Now we're up tomorrow, 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July to you, buddy.
You too. And we have a big one show at. This is not at Korakuen Hall, and it's not at the Nippon Budokan. This is the Tokyo Budokan. This is a building that was built for martial arts contests and tournaments in 1989. Not the classic. You hear Budokan Hall, where All Japan had their main events and New Japan has run big shows. Different Budokan. Budokan is a word for martial arts hall exhibition type of thing. There, I probably don't have that perfect, but
I found about 7 matches over July 4th and July 6th that seem like they might be a big deal.
So we're going to have the Young Lion matches tomorrow. There will be some preview tags. LIJ, or the remnants of LIJ against United Empire. We'll have Hantai versus House of Torture again. TMDK against interesting combination, I think. Bolton, Uemura, and Desperado. Again, Goto is not on the card because selling that elbow thing. And then the key here, 3 matches to end an A block qualifier for the G1 Climax, and that is Ryohei Oiwa against Satoshi Kojima. And of course, originally this was going to be Don Fale, former Bad Luck Fale, but Fale has had a death in the family and has returned home to be with his loved ones. And Satoshi Kojima stepping in against Ryohei Oiwa. This would be a monumental shock if Ryohei Oiwa doesn't win this match. Now, the other match, the qualifier for the B block, last spot in the B block, Yoshihashi against Chase Owens. Now, I had been preparing myself for there to be another House of Torture guy in here. I found a little bit of encouragement, Jeremy. I found something I can hold on to, and I'm clinging to it by my fingernails.
What is that?
They did Monday Madness on Pro Wrestling Noah, which they've been doing a series called Monday Magic. Okay. And that is a series of shows at, it's not at First Ring. It's at Shinjuku Face, small building, right? A little tight, little intimate atmosphere. And every Monday for about 6 Mondays or so, 5 or 6 Mondays, it was a mystery vortex show for Noah. And people would show up, little surprises and things. And this past week, they did another one of these in a larger building, season finale of it, so to speak. The 2 people from New Japan who showed up in this mystery Noah card in the main event, on one side was Ryohei Oiwa, the other side was Yoshihashi. I'm hoping, Jeremy, that this was a little bit of foreshadowing and getting these guys out in front of the Noah audience before they go into the G1. Just don't take this away from me. Of all these things, I just want to see 9 Yoshihashi singles matches, far more than I want to see 9 Chase Owens singles matches. We'll find out tomorrow which one I get in the G1 tournament.
I feel like they've been giving Chase Owens a lot lately.
Mm-hmm.
A lot.
Including Black Bart's old outfit.
I wouldn't be shocked if Yoshihashi won this one.
Yeah, I wouldn't be as much as I was before. I'm the last 7 days has gone a long way for me in thinking that maybe there's a
New Japan can't have looked at a Chase Owens in that white trim black coat and thought, yeah, this is what we need. You know what I mean? Like, Yoshihashi is going to light the world on fire, but you know you're going to get 3 or 4 bangers from him throughout the tournament. But you just don't feel that way about Chase Owens. And that's no shade towards Chase Owens. It's just, that's not what he does.
Yeah, Colin mentions that also on that show. It's on Wrestle Universe. You can watch it. Takumi Iroha against Victoria Yuzuki. So that's the Marvelous champion defending the GHC title. She holds the Marvelous title. She also holds the GHC Joshi title. The Noah's women's champion against Victoria Yuzuki from Marigold, and they had a heck of a match over there. And then Brad says, not even Chase Owens' mom wants to see 9 Chase Owens matches. I believe you. I've never met Chase Owens' mom, but I think you're probably right. Certainly not over Yoshihashi matches. So the other thing that I liked, Jeremy, was that both Oiwa coming out for a Noah show is like, oh, hey, cool, our guy's back. They liked him when he was there. He got over teaming with Kiyomiya and all that. And some of the guys like Justin Nipper, who's a big Noah expert and has been part of the Fight Game Media family in the past. Right. Justin said, like, hey, can we keep him? We're like, no, we want him back. And we had that discussion. But Yoshihashi coming out got a big buzz from that crowd. They were like, oh, cool. So Yoshihashi over, getting maybe a little bit of the Goto rub. But for a guy that was kind of on the card for years and years and years. Yoshihashi starting to build a little bit of sentimental momentum too. Can't hurt stand next to Goto, being Goto's ride or die when Goto is the king. But again, I think it just goes to people appreciating what we have with Yoshihashi, which is a talented wrestler.
Part of me is like, they already told you what's up with the futures of Taichi and Ishii and where they're going. Is that where we're going with Yoshihashi here, or has he still got a little bit left in the tank?
I'm hoping. Please give me more.
This is a curious match because I'm like 50-50. I really am. Like it's a total pick 'em as to which guy that they choose to put in the G1, because could be a night off for some guys to wrestle Chase Owens. And how many night off matches do you have? You know, like there's no Toru Yano. You know what I mean? Like there aren't night off guys, and maybe you're not doing night offs in the G1 this year. I don't know.
Also, a never open weight title match, the trios title, the never open weight 6-man titles, and it's curious because it's the same people that are going to be in another title match later on for the most part. It's going to be Wato, Yo, and Toru Yano challenging Sho, Yujiro, and Ren Narita for the never open weight 6-man tag team titles. And then finally, the global heavyweight title, Tanahashi, who is on every show wrestling for everyone, wrestling against Gabe Kidd for the global title there at the Tokyo Budokan on Friday. So that is tomorrow morning. And then on July 6th, so that's Sunday, back at Korakuen Hall, Tanahashi back in the ring again. He'll be wrestling Tiger Mask. Man, those cortisone shots must be killer over there in Japan. And then after that, junior heavyweights take stage again. Junior tag team titles, Wato and Yo, who will have just had the trios title match 2 days before. They're challenging Doki and Sho for the junior tag titles. Junior heavyweight title on the line. We'll finally get to see the match between El Desperado, who has hopefully been bathing in Neosporin for the last 10 days after his match.
He looked fine on the show. I think he came out on a.
He hasn't looked fine in years. Don't lie to these people.
Well, he came out and he was just walking normally. He was like, "Yeah, I wasn't pulling out shards of glass with a pair of needle nose pliers or anything."
I did one show with fluorescent light where fluorescent light tubes got involved, and I wasn't even the one hit with it. But I was thrown into the ring after it had been everywhere, and it sounds like a joke. 2 days later, I'm showering and I'm finding a little bit of it in my arm or on the other side of me that I hadn't. That stuff's awful.
It kind of buried itself into your body.
Yes, yeah, and you just think, where was it for the last 2 days? They're like, what? Yeah.
If TV saw you were real brave, they would have put that match on the show.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So anyway, after that July 6th show, though, Jeremy, we have an almost 2-week break because nothing is coming up after that until July 19th when the G1 begins. We do not have so far on the NJPW website anyway, what matches or what nights. Yeah,
I think we're getting that after July 4th, probably.
I think so too. I bet it gets announced this weekend when certain matches are happening. And of course, that gives us a lot of insight into who is going to be at least alive for the playoff spots when you see some of those matchups for the last day. So that is why we hold off our previews until we know a little bit more information to give you on that. So hopefully we'll get some of that this weekend as well.
Yeah, I mean, so we are going to recap the 2 shows and probably talk everything that we learned next week on the show.
Yeah.
But then we have one more show to preview the G1 in full. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, there will be an episode of Speaking of Strong Style that is all about previewing the G1 Climax tournament. Yeah, absolutely.
We'll be running down the news and notes and recapping, and then we're just going to have like a freaking party the Thursday before the 19th. Whatever
those bones will be picked. So
I guess it's the 17th, I think.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. It'll be just before the tournament starts. Last Thursday before the tournament starts is when we'll be doing that. Yes.
Lovely.
So I was poking around, Jeremy, when Zach won the title back. I like the guy a lot. So I was kind of poking around in his past matches, just kind of looking at stuff, both in video and then just something in wrestling data. And I saw some things that were interesting. how do you feel about it when we wrap up the show with a little bit of Zack Sabre Jr. history of our
doing
new
a
world
history
champion?
lesson?
A little
Steven
bit.
Conway, like walk down memory lane?
A little bit. Not so much
Walk
just like
me
a
down,
chronological thing, but some interesting moments from Zack's career.
Sure.
So
let's drive past the landmarks.
Yeah. So his name's Lucas Eatwell. He was born in the Isle of Sheppey in 1987. So on July.
Know his real name, Lucas Eatwell.
Yeah, Lucas Eatwell. This is his real name right there, Zack Sabre Jr. I am unaware of a Zack Sabre Jr. Senior in pro wrestling at all. So it's not unusual to kind of name yourself after somebody and call yourself Junior, even if you're not a junior. Like Rey Mysterio Jr. is the nephew of the real Rey Mysterio. You know, but I'm unaware of a Zack Sabre Senior in wrestling. So I think that's just a name he just decided rolled off the tongue nicely there. But yeah, Lucas Eatwell, born in the Isle of Sheppey, a very small island in England there, and he'll be 38 on the 24th of July. So his birthday's coming up here in 3 weeks from today.
So he's not even a young guy anymore.
Oh no. He's 38.
Yeah, you look at him, you think he could be still in his 20s. You do. You can look at him and.
Yeah, I suppose so. He does have. Yeah, he has a young face there. So he basically began with NWA UK Hammerlock in 2004, and we don't have great records from that promotion. Not everything was written down and marked up and on some of the wrestling, like WrestlingData.com or CageMatch.com, all those kind of things. So we don't know a whole lot about his early career. He was doing very small shows and very small arenas and buildings there. But I thought this one was interesting that we do have a record of. One of his early matches from his rookie year was a match with Danny Williams and Eden Black, defeating Paul Tracy and Fergal Devitt. So one of his early matches was Zack Sabre Jr. and Finn Balor out there, probably in front of a few dozen people in England right there. You'd see names like Jimmy Havoc in there in some of his early returns. But the early 2000s were a bit of a Wild West in England when it comes to that. There were a lot of promotions, almost none of them big, and almost none of them particularly profitable. So he began appearing for other promotions in the UK and Europe, but it ramped up slowly. And you can see it, for instance, we only have records of him appearing for Hammerlock in 2004. But then he appeared for 2 different companies in 2005, then 6 different companies in 2006, 9 different companies in 2007. So each year he was kind of gaining a reputation. Everywhere he wrestled, somebody was like, we need to get this guy. And of course, you know how that goes on the indies where someone else on the card sees him, goes back to their home promotion and just kind of says, you ought to book this dude that I just saw for promotion Y and get him into promotion X. And so now the reputation starts to grow, right? So he even, this is one that cracked me up because it is the polar opposite of what you would think for Zack. He participated in a King of the Deathmatch tournament for WXW. Can you believe that? It was a show called, get ready for this, Gore Fest in 2006. Steve Douglas defeated Darkseid and Zack Sabre Jr. in a European King of the Deathmatch quarterfinal. It was a 10,000 thumbtacks, tables, and chairs match. I can't even picture Zack with thumbtacks sticking out of him right there. But you do what you have to do when you're a young wrestler, right? So I mentioned that you see all the promotions growing. So, but all these companies were small, running mostly on weekends, and a lot of them unsteady, and they would kind of come and go. So if you look over the list of promotions he worked at, you would see a lot of different names. You don't necessarily see a lot of these promotions in a lot of different years. They would come and then they would disappear, and somebody else would kind of move in. And like I said, it was difficult for any of them to get a real foothold. He made his first appearance for Noah in 2008, but not in Japan. Noah had TV in the UK. It had just gotten a TV deal over there. So they occasionally ran shows in the UK. At this point, by 2008, Zack had worked his way up enough that he got booked on there for Noah. That would probably turn out to be a pretty serendipitous moment for him right there, because it included a 20-minute draw with Yoshinobu Kanemaru in that little tour there as they went around.
Oh, Uncle Nobu. Always
Uncle
on
Nobu.
a roll.
You started to see him in some names that we recognize from today. Even in 2009, he wrestled in Germany. That was a big kind of a step. Now he's starting to move outside the UK more. That's mostly where he wrestled, is in the UK. Even for companies like WXW, he would wrestle for them when they would be in England. He wrestled for Noah when they were in England. Well, then Germany, the company WXW, where Youngblood just had their internship along with Rev Pro, their excursion, they brought him to Germany. So they liked him enough, they brought him in there. And in 2010, he wrestled in Germany for CZW. You remember CZW right there? And including he went to the ECW arena for them. And this was an interesting match. Zack teamed with Tommy End, Aleister Black, against Karsten Black and Walter. So the thing about that.
Wow.
Yeah. He also wrestled Adam Cole in that tour there for when they were going around for CZW and WXW. 2011 is when Zack began working for Noah in Japan, as well as when they would come to England. Did a little bit of both. So Noah came back in 2011. Zack was booked on those shows. Then he went over to England, and that's when he began to get a real foothold in Japan. Another company, by the way, that he worked for was Dragon Gate, also when they would travel over to England. So, but Noah was the first to really bring him over regularly to Japan. He faced Kenta, Taiji Ishimori. He appeared in Noah's junior heavyweight tag team tournament. His team was Zack and Taishi Takezawa. And that is where he ran into Yoshinari Ogawa. Sometimes he was a partner, sometimes he was an opponent, but Ogawa would go on to be a huge influence in Zack's career. You heard tributes to him when Ogawa retired not too long ago. I think he even did some of Ogawa's moves in a match around when Ogawa retired. And he and Ogawa held their junior heavyweight tag team titles twice. Ogawa is the guy with Jeremy. I mentioned it before. When I went to Japan in 2019, I went to an N1 Victory show. I wanted to see their tournament. And on the undercard was this guy who still had good legs, looked a little older than the others, but was really wrestling well. And I kind of tilted my head to the side and I elbowed my girlfriend, who has no idea what I'm talking about. And I just said, "Is that friggin' Ogawa?" Like, I couldn't believe it, because I watched Ogawa in the mid 90s wrestling for All Japan. And here he was in the 2019 and into the 2020s wrestling at a high level for Noah through. So just one of those ageless guys, and was a big influence on Zack's career. But in Noah, there was a ceiling for Zack. They booked him as a junior heavyweight, which is probably legit. He wasn't very big at that point. He was more lanky than anything else. He was all arms and legs. And he would have a number one contendership match and lose. He would maybe get a title match once in a while, but he wouldn't win it. He never held the singles title in Noah. Those two tag team runs with Ogawa were the only time he held the belt in Noah. But his reputation was growing as a great worker. He appeared at All Together that year. So that's the first time he wrestled on a show that had some New Japan participation. He was in a battle royal in that one. He didn't win it. Kentaro Shiga won that battle royal, but that was the first time he appeared on a show that had the lion mark on it. And then this is what I'm talking about his reputation growing. From 2008 to 2019, at least 10 different promotions each year over the course of the year. And so often a lot more than that. In 2011 alone, he wrestled for 25 different companies. Everyone was booking him. So he got to be the guy, if you were going to put together a big show or a tournament or have guests in, that he's one of the first guys you would call around the world. So his name's out there, and he's doing over 100 matches a year, working mostly in smaller companies that run on weekends, again, with some Noah tours thrown in. You started to see regular patterns show up. You're starting to see Rev Pro become established and become a top indie company in the UK, to the point that WWE started kind of building NXT UK, because I think they were starting to sweat some of the scene there in the UK. But that's why we got NXT UK. We mentioned it because they were worried about somebody else. I can't, if it was Rev Pro or another. I don't think it was another. I think it was another company that they were getting TV in England, and all of a sudden WWE was starting to sweat them a little bit, started signing everybody up. But Zack didn't go, and that was one of the things when a lot of guys were starting to go to WWE. Zack didn't. WXW provided some of his most interesting matchups. So he became a mainstay for Rev Pro, and Rev Pro started becoming a company that wasn't just running small shows on weekends, like starting to become a real thing. WXW, one of the more intriguing lineups out there. In 2013, for instance, he was wrestling Marty Scurll. We mentioned Tommy End, Walter, AR Fox, Drew Gulak, and Ricochet. Those were some of the WXW guys. 2014, he was in with Marcel Bartel, now known as Ludwig Kaiser. So in 2015, he and Walter held the WXW tag team titles, and they beat Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly for those titles, Red Dragon. And then they lost them to Robert Dreisker and Ilya Dragunov. So imagine Zach and Ilya Dragunov. I'd love to see that match now. 2014, he was in the Battle of Los Angeles. He defeated Adam Cole in that one before losing to O'Reilly again. So at this point, like I mentioned, you got a major tournament somewhere where you need really good matches, you call Zach. He was in Bola. He was in Progress Super Strong 16, a tournament he eventually won. He was in the Cruiserweight Classic for WWE. Right. Forget that one. He was in that was a terrific tournament. And in that one, he beat Tyson Ducks, Drew Gulak, and then Noam Dar before he lost to Grand Metalik in the semifinals. Didn't win because he didn't sign, right? Didn't win because he didn't sign. TJP ended up winning that tournament because he signed. So he still worked tours for Noah throughout 2015. But by 2015, he was starting to run into some names that would mean a lot to him later. 2015 is when you start seeing names like El Desperado, Taichi, Mikey Nichols, and Shane Haste. Those are people that he would start teaming. He was teaming with Mikey and Shane because he was being tormented by Suzuki-gun. Again, this thing when Noah and New Japan were working together. Geto and Jado had been a part of the booking for New Japan, and then Jado went to book Noah. Noah was kind of on its rear end. They sent Suzuki-gun over to be the top heel faction in Noah from New Japan. So with the storyline that they were kicked out of New Japan and ended up in Noah. But it was all just to kind of help each other out there. And Zach and Nichols and Haste weren't officially TMDK. Nichols and Haste were. Zach was the guy that was teaming with those two. It wasn't a faction. And they were facing Suzuki-gun up and down the card and tour after tour. He was in the Global Junior Heavyweight League in 2015 in the A block with Ogawa. And to show you how the synergy goes, Sho, when he was still Sho Tanaka, was in that tournament. Keno, Hitoshi Kumano, El Desperado, Daisuke Harada. That was the A block in there. So a real mix of Noah and New Japan. He finished on 8 points with same as Desperado and Keno, but Harada won the block. And I mentioned that's where he was in Noah. He would enter these tournaments and do well, but not win. He had those two little runs with Ogawa with the junior tag titles, but those bounced around a lot, similar to how the New Japan tag team titles do. He'd be someone to have those great matches, but they never really gave him the ball to run with it. And he finished up with them in 2015 and didn't appear for Noah in 2016. But in 2016, he did win his first Rev Pro British title, and that would be a title that he would become closely identified with. And in the end, he would kind of be the mountain that Will Ospreay had to climb in England in order to become the guy, right? He had to get past Zack. But that all started in 2016. He won the title. He beat AJ Styles for that title in January of that year. And he held it until November when he appeared in New Japan's Rev Pro Global Wars. And he lost it to Katsuyori Shibata in London. And also on that tour, he teamed with Marty Scurll in a loss to Sonata and Tetsuya Naito when Rev Pro and New Japan ran a couple of shows together. This is when he started transitioning over to being a New Japan guy after all that time in Noah. And in 2017, things really began to move more toward New Japan. He appeared at the 45th anniversary show in March. I mentioned that he had lost the Rev Pro title to Shibata in November of 2016. Well, then in the anniversary show in March, he regained that title from Shibata in Oda Ward Gymnasium to win the British heavyweight title. So they gave everybody an eyeful of him. And then he had his first match with Suzuki-gun in New Japan the next night at Korakuen. And so at this point, he had joined those who had torn him to pieces for a couple of years, joined up with Suzuki-gun at that point. And he was teaming with Kanemaru, teaming with Taichi, teaming with Desperado. And at that first show, they beat Goto, Jado, Geto, and Beretta. That was the Chaos team up there. And after that, he was a consistent New Japan wrestler. So he was still appearing in other companies at this point, though. It was a few years before that long list of companies he would appear for each year would start to get pared down. He still appears for other people at various times. We've seen that and discussed it on the show. But that was the beginning there. 2017, wins the title. Still the British heavyweight champion, and that's still part of his gimmick, that he's the champion of Great Britain. But he was starting to wrestle with Suzuki-gun, and in the spring of 2017, becoming a regular New Japan wrestler. And we're out of time for now, but we might revisit that a little bit more. But that's some of Zack's journey of going from these tiny little companies in England that would last a little while, not too long, there for a good time, not for a long time, to becoming one of the go-to guys when people like PWG, WXW, Progress Wrestling, when they need someone who can deliver great wrestling, they would bring him in, to becoming the man in Great Britain through holding that Rev Pro title once Rev Pro established itself as the company in Great Britain to be the champion of. You held the Rev Pro title, you were probably the best wrestler in England. And that got him through his Noah runs.
Keeper of Awesome.
And then to the New Japan roster. So that was a little bit there about how Zack got to where he is, and now he is a 2-time IWGP World Heavyweight Champion.
Fun. I mean, can't wait to. You definitely need to do the second half of that at some point. We'll cut it all together eventually. And don't forget, we have the watch back this Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern. 2 p.m. Pacific, Steven Conway and myself and Garrett Gonzalez recapping Wrestle Kingdom 11, Omega Okada. What else you got, Conway, before we get out of here?
I think that's it. And we will, like you mentioned, we'll go over these things, these 2 shows from Tokyo when we come back. Thank you, Brad. He says he loves my history lessons. I love doing them. It's a rabbit hole I go down anyway. The only difference is I take notes and share them with you guys on this. So it's, I do this stuff for fun. So I go back and dig around and dig up all these weird matches like Zack and the Thumbtack match.
It's like running back like the one death match that Zack Sabre Jr. ever did. In a quarterfinal of a 3-way in Germany in 2000 and whatever.
It might be the only one he ever did. I don't know.
Probably did it. It's like not doing that again.
Yeah,
I better get good at technical. I better get good at technical wrestling because I ain't doing this again.
Yeah, I'm doing that World of Sports stuff. That feels much better than Thumbtacks.
Nope, I know what style I'm doing now.
All right. Well, with that, we will leave you for now. Let's go, Yoshihashi. Bring it home, my man. So for Jeremy Finestone, I'm Steven Conway. Thank you for everyone who listened to this as a podcast. Thanks for everyone who joined us live. We always appreciate you guys. We know your time's valuable. We're grateful that you spend it with us. And we will talk to you again real soon.